Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome to Guns N' Roses Central. And today we're doing another episode of Guns N' Roses True Story. So in today's episode, we're talking about my favorite leg of the Guns N' Roses Use Your Illusion tour. We're talking about the Skin and Bones tour. The Skin and Bones tour started on February 23rd, 1993, and Guns N' Roses did a series of dates in late February, March, and April across the US, and a few dates in Mexico. Then from there, they went to Europe and did a series of dates all the way from Israel all the way to Western Europe before finally ending the tour in Argentina on July 17th, 1993. So according to Slash's book, Guns N' Roses were originally going to just be touring on Use Your Illusion for about a year and a half or so. But because they hadn't really made any money after about a year of touring, they decided to add dates in South America as well as a bunch of other places. So here's what Slash had to say in his book. At the end of our year-long tour, the biggest mistake all came to light. He was referring to the end of 1992. We'd barely made any money. Between the union dues incurred by Axl taking the stage late night after night and the theme parties that bled us dry night after night, we had next to nothing to show for all of our hard work. Doug finally confronted Axl about the band's spending on the Metallica tour and the fact that our profit margins had been eaten up by our excess. I think Axl had a few suggestions as to cost cutting that wouldn't have done much, but Doug finally got through to him and he told Axl that if he wanted to keep his nice new multi-million-dollar mansion in Malibu, he needed to earn more money. And so Doug booked us another year of dates starting with South America, Europe, Japan, and Australia from 1992 in October through January 1993. As hard it was to endure, Doug got no argument from the rest of us. We wanted to play. What else would I be doing anyways? And at the same time, I thought maybe things would change. I also wondered continually whether the extra tour had been booked out of concern for the band's finances or to land Doug a hefty commission. Now, the early part of 1993, Guns N' Roses played a series of dates across Australia, New Zealand, and Japan. Those dates are not considered part of the Skin and Bones tour because Guns N' Roses still had their big band set up. They had the horn players, they had Teddy Andreas, they had the backup singers, and after those dates, that's when they returned to the States. So Slash recounted that section in his book as well. So he said, we returned to the States in early February and had a month before we started the next leg, an American tour called Skin and Bones. This jaunt in particular was aimed at making us money because the production was stripped back to the bare essentials. We kept Izzy Reed, but Teddy and the horn section were gone, as were the backup singers. The tour featured an acoustic section in the middle of the set that showcased the hits off Lies, as well as a few cover songs such as Dead Flowers. I couldn't have been happier. Finally, we were touring as bare bones rock and roll band again. This leg, in my mind, was our chance to show the world the Use Your Illusion records as I had always heard them. The day that I'd finished recording my last guitar part for those records, I left the studio with a mix of them that was simple and raw before any synths or horns or backup vocal tracks were layered on. I'd never forgotten how cool they sounded in that stripped-down, simple, powerful state. I wish I still had a copy of them or that they were floating around the internet somewhere. Believe me, they sounded so cool. They were entirely different beasts altogether from the versions that got released. I'm not going to get into hindsight about what could have been, but all in all, they were two wholly different bodies of work. In any case, we got a chance to do songs scaled back and straight up, the band reduced to its normal size. I was elated. Now, this is the typical set list that Guns N' Roses would play on the Skin and Bones tour. You know, the Skin and Bones concerts were a little bit shorter than what they played the previous years. You know, previously Guns N' Roses would play like a 2.5 hour, 3 hour show. These shows were more in the range of an hour and a half or so. Now, they didn't play all these songs every single night. There was the odd night they would play, you know, a different song. You know, they may play, there was rumors that they played Coma one night. I think it was in Omaha, Nebraska, and that's the same version of Coma you hear on Live Era. There was the odd time they played Garden of Eden. They would also play The Garden sometimes, at least during the run of U.S. dates that they did. They'd also play, there was also one show in Boston where they played Reckless Life, which was a really rare performance. And then when they played in Milton Keynes, when Izzy was back in the band, they brought out Ronnie Wood, and they played like a Rolling Stones cover as well. So here's an interview with Dizzy Reed where he talked about the actual rehearsals for the Skin and Bones tour and how they came up with the idea of actually bringing out a couch and chairs during the acoustic section. And Slash also talked a bit about the acoustic section too in the same interview.
Acoustic is glass. I just, when we first started rehearsals to do that, I remember we brought out like, all the stools. And everyone was sitting there doing it. And I remember Axe showed up to rehearsal. He's like, no way, can't do this. It's like, we need a couch and a coffee table, It was like your living room now, right? And that's what like made it. we brought the couch out there and the table, and we got the guy comes out with the pizza and stuff. So it's like, it's like sitting around your house jamming, and that's basically what the acoustic stuff started as, I think. And in some way, trying to portray that to the audience, I think makes it more real. And I don't know, I think it's a lot of fun for us, and I think most of the people get into it in the same way. A lot of diehards and like metalheads will be like, oh man, they do like a 20-minute really boring acoustic set, but we have a great time doing it, and the songs are there, and we just do whatever we feel like, which makes it fun for us. And I think people can read that more than when they see a band that's out there doing it extensively like a job and just doing the same ritual routine over and over and over and over again. I can name a lot of bands that I know that would actually flag me and name Guns N' Roses, but I won't name them. But there are bands out there doing it, and they've been doing it for a long time.
So around the same time the Skin and Bones tour started, Axl and his then girlfriend Stephanie Seymour had actually broken up. And right when the tour started, all the way pretty much to the end, Axl started wearing a Charles Manson shirt that said Charlie Don't Surf. It came in a couple different colors. There was a black one that he wore for a lot of the US dates, and once they got to Mexico and Europe, then he started to wear the red Charlie Don't Surf shirt for a lot of the concerts. So for a lot of those US tour dates and those Mexico shows, Brian May, who was a close personal friend of the band, actually opened those shows with his own band. And Brian May would play a number of dates in Europe later that year with Guns N' Roses. Also on tour with Guns N' Roses in North America was Blind Melon. So the first show that Guns N' Roses played as part of the Skin and Bones tour was in Austin, Texas, and that show went reasonably well. In fact, The Garden and Garden of Eden were both performed live for the first time. And it was one of the few Guns N' Roses concerts where Mr. Brownstone wasn't actually played live. Now, the next show didn't go as well, so Guns played a show in Birmingham, Alabama 2 days later, and towards the end of the show, Axl actually left the stage because he blew out his voice. That was because the stage monitors were turned off, causing him to sing louder than normal, and after the show, Axl ended up firing the sound engineer who forgot to put the monitors on. Now, the following 5 shows after the Alabama concert had to be postponed because of inclement weather, and they also canceled the show in Atlanta because Axl had been arrested there during the Appetite Tour for kicking in the head of a security guard whom he'd supposedly been roughing up the audience members. Doug didn't trust either Axl or the venue security, and he was probably right on both counts, according to Slash. Now, fast forward to Sacramento, where Guns N' Roses played in April of 1993. This show is notable because Axl did a rant against Metallica, and they actually had to end the show early because somebody threw a bottle that actually knocked Duff out at the show. Here's footage of the actual incidents.
So we're kind of like around the Bay Area, right? Good, so it's kind of like we're here on somebody else's turf in a way. Some people we used to like to think that we were homeboys or something. We'll talk about maybe your good friends, I don't know, Metallica for a minute. Let me tell you a couple of things about Metallica. First off, they do a lot of bitching for a band who got paid about 20-30% more than fucking what they deserved at a show because they didn't bring that much. Ooh, Axl's talking now. Well, listen to that. Who does he think he is? I'll tell you who I think I am. I thought I was friends with these people. You know, I don't know how long they were on the road, but there was nobody in their crew that had ever got a bonus or paid anything extra for working their fucking ass off and slaving for that man. I pretty much watched a lot of people get treated like shit and it wasn't very enjoyable. I watched a man named James prove that, since I'm supposed to be the rock racist, because I used a word once, I watched a man show me that he was a motherfucking racist. Had a real big problem with Ice-T and any black bands, actually. Rap is really terrible and black bands, and it's kind of out there. I watched them be really shitty to black people that work with us. That wasn't very enjoyable. I watched them diss on other people like Sebastian and shit. People that like love this fucking band. They love Metallica. They would like fucking do anything for that band. But Metallica don't give a shit. Lars don't give a shit. Motherfucker calls me at 4 in the morning trying to kiss my ass and stuff. And it's like, but I can't trust the motherfucker. Because he's going to take it and figure out where to go make some more money. Like the time that we sat around writing a video for Don't Cry and we talked about being underwater and showing all these things, and then Lars runs home and writes a video. And the cool thing about it is, he caught to it. Yeah, I was ripping you guys off. I'm gonna dedicate this to these people who like to run fucking little videos with people saying, fuck you, this ain't the Guns N' Roses tour, this is Metallica. Who say things like, oh, that was just a joke because we're friends. It's like, you ain't no fucking friend of mine, you fucking stupid little fucking dimwit cocksucker. This is for you, Lars, and you, James. This is called Double Talking Jive Motherfucker. Now, being here in Sacramento, do you think I would say that shit here of all places if I was afraid of getting called on it? I mean, I know that somebody here is going to call Metallica and tell them. I personally don't feel like talking to the motherfuckers myself. I ain't telling you not to like their music, not to like them or whatever. I ain't saying none of that. But it gets really fucking hard when you try to put a show together. We wanted to do a tour with Metallica since the day we started. I remember seeing the band open for Rat at the Troubadour. We worked real hard to put this fucking thing together. We paid them a few $1 million more than every band should have got paid because they wouldn't do it unless they got a certain amount. Okay, fine. Let's just do the show. We took a loss. It was cool because we wanted you motherfuckers to be able to see that show. That's all it was about. And the only way we could fucking get them to do it was that we called it co-headlining. Okay? So fine, we call it co-headlining. But when the shit all went down, the motherfuckers couldn't live with it. Oh my god, we opened for Guns N' Roses. How do we ever live this down? Well, if that's the way you felt about us, you should have never played a motherfucking show with us to begin with, man. Just be fucking honest. That's all. That's all it's about. Let's do it. Anybody see what it was? Well, we like. I hate to ruin your fun, and I'm fun. But somebody just hit Duff in the head with a bottle and now he's not able to play, so we're sorry. Have a good night, and if you find the asshole, kill him. Hold on. Can I get everybody's fucking attention for a second? Alright, this shit happens at a lot of gigs, and I know it's not everybody in this fucking building's fault, but some asshole just hit Duff up the fucking head with a bottle of piss. Alright? And now he has to go to the fucking hospital. So what the fuck is it? It's over. And it's just one person that does it. It's the stupidest fucking conduct in a concert. We're supposed to be having a good fucking time. Does anybody understand what I'm saying? Anyway, listen, there's no way we're gonna fucking come back on, so listen, the show's over, and if you could do us all a favor, and the building a favor, and everybody that's working to make this a good fucking time a favor, just leave peacefully, don't fucking fuck with other people, don't fuck with anything, just cruise on. And hopefully, if we come back to Sacramento, we'll have this whole show and some dick face won't throw in shit. For the most part, you guys have been awesome, alright? See ya.
So following the Sacramento show, the next night Guns N' Roses actually played Reno, Nevada, and early on in the show, at the start of Mr. Brownstone, Axl actually asked Duff how he's doing after being hit in the head with a bottle. And later, Axl tells the audience that they stopped the show the night before and they would do the same tonight if anything was thrown on stage. As GNR were coming on stage for their encore, someone in the audience lit up fireworks, which pissed off the band and made them end the show early, so they didn't play Paradise City like they normally do in the encore. So following the concert in Reno, Nevada, Slash actually flew back to Los Angeles and he performed live on Jay Leno's Tonight Show with Brian May, where they performed Tie Your Mother Down. So following the US tour dates, Guns would play a couple shows in Mexico, and Duff would actually talk about a band meeting that they called to confront Axl about the late starts. So in Duff's book, he said, at a gig in Mexico City later that April, we called a band meeting. Slash, Gilby, Matt agreed to confront Axl about the lateness. Somebody had to start the conversation. Listen, I said to Axl when everyone was assembled, we're drinking ourselves into oblivion, waiting 3 hours listening to our fans chant bullshit. We've been working hard to keep this thing together. I paused and looked around for support. The other guys looked away and shrank a little bit in their seats. That was it. Later at the show itself, I was too effed up and I knew it. I could hear myself babbling incoherently backstage, the guttural sounds spilling from my mouth between gulps of vodka and cranberry barely resembling words. Then we took the stage. I finally stumbled across the line I had always held sacred. I found myself falling behind. Following the dates in Mexico, Guns N' Roses had to cancel the next several shows because Gilby had actually broken his wrist in a motorcycling accident. As you guys know, Izzy left the band in November of 1991. At least that's when it was officially announced. And then Gilby Clarke came in, filled in for him pretty much through the rest of 91, 92, and most of 93. So Guns N' Roses were touring the U.S. back in the winter and spring of 1993. In addition to the shows in the U.S., Guns played a couple shows in Mexico. So following their shows in Mexico, Gilby Clarke actually broke his wrist in a motorcycling accident. And Guns N' Roses still had 4 shows left on their U.S. tour. And they had to cancel those shows because they couldn't find a replacement in enough time. But what was also a jeopardy was the next leg of the tour where Guns N' Roses were going to be playing across the Middle East as well as Europe. So here's an interview with Gilby Clarke around April, May of 1993 when he's on Headbangers Ball, and you can see the cast on his wrist.
Welcome back to the Headbangers Ball. It's my barbecue edition here with Gilby Clarke of Guns N' Roses.
My party.
And we asked Kelly a question not too long ago with a very similar answer that we're going to ask Gilby. What happened to your arm there, Gilby?
Your bike.
I had the Death motorcycle.
Death motorcycle.
The same motorcycle that Kelly broke his arm on.
I broke my wrist on it.
During this motocross race. See what happens? You get a bunch of rockers on dirt bikes, and Gilby's got the same experience as I do, Harley Davidsons, and then you put us on dirt bikes, we really don't belong.
We have no idea. We're sitting like way back, you know. It happened, I think, on the triple jump. If I was going up, I was doing 3 spins and stuff on the way down it.
And so now you're hurt for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm out for a
little while. You're going to be better and back out on the road with Guns, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to miss a couple dates in Europe, and then I'll be back.
Tell me when you're going to be back. Tell me when you're going to be back on the road with these guys.
I'm going to miss like 5 dates of Europe because we're going out in the middle of this month.
Okay, I have another question. Since it was my motorcycle and I sort of coerced you to do this race, is anybody pissed off at me?
Yeah.
I just,
You notice I'm the only one here.
I did notice that.
Exactly.
Okay, well, good luck with everything, and I hope you feel better. And
good party.
Gilby will be back out on the road with Guns N' Roses. Unless there's another race coming up, and then they'll be real mad at me. Right now, let's play a video from Slayer.
So with Gilby Clarke injured, Guns N' Roses were in a bind. There was a lot of money that they were going to make on this Europe tour, and Axl had a big mortgage on his house that he had to pay off. So Slash talked about how they came up with the idea of Izzy coming back into the band. So in his book, he said, then at the end of April, when we were back in LA, Gilby broke his wrist in a motorcycle accident. We weren't sure how bad it was until he showed up at a band meeting in a very serious looking cast. Wow, I said, that looks pretty bad. How long is it going to take to heal, Axl asked him. Gilby looked truly depressed, 2 to 3 weeks. F. I know, man, Gilby said, this effing sucks. We had a European tour booked starting with 2 dates in Russia, our first ever, 2 weeks later. F it, Axl said, let's call Izzy. So here's the MTV News report from May of 1993 announcing that Izzy was going to be temporarily rejoining the band.
The Guns N' Roses guitarist who left that group in 1991 amid much recrimination is back on stage with the band, at least temporarily, pinch hitting for the guitarist who replaced him, Gilby Clarke. Clarke recently broke his fretting wrist in a motorcycle accident, so Guns frontman Raxl Rose put in a fence-bending call to Stradlin, who has a band of his own called the Juju Hounds, and persuaded him to rejoin for a few weeks to play some overseas dates. Meanwhile, 3 other members of Guns N' Roses, guitarist Slash, bassist Duff McKagan, and even the injured but still singing Gilby Clarke joined Lemmy Kilmister of Motorhead and a variety of other hard rock musicians at the Hollywood Palladium in Los Angeles last weekend as the Drunk F Blank X. They played a fundraiser for a popular local tour manager named Fred Saunders, who recently broke nearly every major bone in his body in a motorcycle accident. Here's a look at the show.
So Slash talked a bit more about what it was like to have Izzy come back in the band in his book. Here's what he said. I was surprised and happy to hear that Izzy went for it, although I was completely confused to hear that Izzy didn't want to rehearse at all. Not that we had much time to anyways. As it turns out, the political situation in Russia in May of 1993 was too unstable for us to play Moscow, so we flew to Tel Aviv, Israel to rehearse with Izzy before we launched the tour there at Hyrcan Park Arena. We booked a rehearsal space studio in Tel Aviv, and it was a trip. This place was a recording studio, as well as I think the engineers didn't believe that the band booked was actually us until we walked through the door. We got together in this cheap old spot that was homey in a foreign way and run by these old people who were really cool. It was an average rehearsal space with mid-range recording equipment, and they'd clearly never seen anyone like us there before, so we totally blew them away, and for that reason alone, it was worth it. Izzy showed up with dreadlocks and hadn't practiced one song, so we did what we could. Now, if you guys want to see that rehearsal space, you guys can watch the Guns N' Roses documentary, Photographic History. That rehearsal space is shown at the very beginning, and you can actually see Izzy rehearsing with the band as well. Now, you guys may be wondering, why would Izzy just come back all of a sudden? And Izzy explained in an interview that the reason he came back was because Guns N' Roses owed him a lot of money, and they hadn't paid him that money since he left the band in 1991, so he cut a deal with them and said, you guys pay me the money I'm owed, and I'll come and help you guys out. The rumor I had heard is that they paid Izzy something like $1 million to come out and play those 5 shows with him, although I don't know if that's actually true or not. And in the same interview, Izzy talked about how he wanted to go see places that he'd never been before. And, Izzy filled in for 5 dates. They played 5 dates in 4 countries, in Israel, Turkey, Greece, and Milton Keynes in England. So he thought, Turkey, Israel, and Greece, places he'd never been before. He saw what a cool way to actually go see these places. So Slash talked a bit about the Israel gig. He said, we played to 50,000 people in Israel for the first time. He says, sadly, it was a pretty loose set because Izzy wasn't up to speed and hadn't been conscientious about practicing. The press criticized us pretty harshly, saying that we had used this opportunity as a warm-up date, which was not true at all. We wanted to be great, but with the rhythm guitarist who still was unfamiliar with material, there was only so much we could do. We did the gig. We hung out there for a couple days. We saw all the sights. He also talked about how him, Izzy, and Duff actually went to where Jesus was born, and they actually ate in the square around the Wailing Wall. Now, Axl had a rant back in 2002 at a gig in Boston about the same gig in Tel Aviv, Israel. Here's what Axl had to say about Izzy.
I read something somewhere. Someone was writing an article about my other friends, and they wrote this thing about how, in the old days, they used to there was a lot of problems in the technical areas of the band. Izzy couldn't hear himself. The reason that Izzy couldn't hear himself, this isn't being mean, this was, is our roadies would stand behind Izzy's amps. Because Izzy would be so whacked out of his mind that he would basically be playing a different song in a different key. And the only way we could do the songs was every time he would go to his amps, he would turn his amps up and he would turn around to the crowd. When he would turn around to the crowd, the roadies would reach around and turn his amps back down so that we could play the song. That worked especially well in Tel Aviv. Just a little tidbit there for your Trivial Pursuit.
Now, there is some pro shop footage of the Israel concert. If you guys have ever seen that Greece special, a lot of people think the footage is from Greece or from the Athens show. It's not. It's from Tel Aviv, Israel. And there's also a news report from the same concert, and you can see Slash and everybody else wearing the exact same clothing. So I've linked to those down below if you guys want to check them out. So Duff McKagan also talked about having Izzy back in the band in 1993. He said crowds stopped the show for minutes on end to chant Izzy's name. It was great. Greek teenagers seemed to understand something we had lost track of to some extent. This was or had been first and foremost a band of friends who believed in our music and in one another. Izzy and I started out as neighbors who would take the city bus to get to a gig where we were the fourth band on the bill of 4 bands, just happy to be playing a gig with a band we believed in with everything we had, and we saw it through. Now I looked at Izzy and recognized the clarity he had, the sense of purpose behind his decisions. Izzy had his feet beneath him and could walk away, which he did again after those 5 shows. My feet felt stuck in cement or quicksand. I wanted what he had but had no idea how to get it, though I guess I didn't want sobriety badly enough to go to Izzy and ask him for help. That would have put me in a situation where I would have had to either follow through or fail. So following the gig in Israel, Guns N' Roses went to Greece, and Guns N' Roses actually filmed a special in Greece for MTV, and they talked a bit about Izzy returning to the band. So here's what Matt, Duff, and Slash had to say about it.
Myself, I've always kept friends with Izzy, and so it's really just like him stepping back in. It's okay, I mean, he's forgotten a few of the songs, but, you know, it's all right, you know, people know that he hasn't played with us for over 2 years, so they're not going to expect, you know, crystal clear, perfect, you know, sounds coming off the stage, because they definitely are not. Not just against Izzy, I mean, everybody. We've never been perfect.
Initially, the breakup when it first happened was kept under wraps. We've gotten so, you know, we go through those periods where everybody was used to living together or staying in the same hotel, that when we go home, we all live in different places. And I'd be busy doing my thing, completely obsessed with what the band is doing, and Axe will be doing his thing. And everybody, you know, so we wouldn't see each other that much. And so Izzy just really got farther and farther away from him. And that had been developing over years anyway. And when he quit, it was like at such short notice, it was so close to the next leg of the tour. And he didn't call any of the guys in the band. He just called management and sent like a letter of resignation. So there was a lot of tension going on when all that finally came to light, that this was going on. And then having to find another guitar player and all that kind of stuff. And I think there was a bit of resentment for a while. And at this point, you know, I've known him for so long, I can't be mad at the guy. And it was great to see him. So it's like I said, water under the bridge.
It feels good because, you know, when he left the band, it was a little weird. You know, I mean, it was for different reasons. He was feeling, you know, like he kind of wanted to do his own thing. And when we split, we really haven't really spoken to each other You know, and I've spoken to him a few times, Stuff's spoken to him a few times, you know, but not like it used to be. So when he came back, at first when I saw him, it was a little strange. But once we got up on stage, it feels just like the old days. I look over him now, and it's like, wow, this is really, it's kind of trippy, you know.
Do you think that it's helped heal the wounds then, really?
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's helped heal the wounds to a lot of other people too. You know, a lot of people thought that we had a lot of conflict amongst us with Izzy and stuff, but that's not true. You know, and for him to come back, it's obviously, you know, it's cool, you know.
So Slash also had this to say about Izzy rejoining the band in 1993. He said, Izzy stayed out there with us for a while, all through Greece and Turkey, places we'd never been before. I didn't think much of it at the time, but Izzy was doing what he does best. He was checking out the situation, taking stock, observing everything, taking part while committing to nothing. He wanted to see what had changed and what hadn't. He was taking note of how much drinking was going on, what Axl's trip was. He was testing the water to see if he could deal with it. At the time, I still thought he'd quit the band because of the riot in St. Louis and the near riot in Germany. I didn't even realize that those incidents were the least of his concerns. He said Izzy remained on board until late May, ending his run with 2 shows at the National Bowl in Milton Keynes, England. Gilby flew out and hung out, and the 2 of them got along great. There was no drama as the baton was passed, thank God. And if you guys have seen any of the Making Effing Videos documentary, or I think it was the Photographic History, Gilby talks about how he's known Izzy for quite a while back to the club days. And during one of the nights that Guns N' Roses played in Milton Keynes, they actually brought Ronnie Wood and Mike Monroe out on stage to perform a Rolling Stones song, Honky Tonk Woman, and here's the actual clip of it.
There he is. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ronnie Wood, Mr. Mike Monroe, Mr. Gilby Clarke. We're going to try singing the song that even Ronnie doesn't know. None of us know it.
Now, following the dates in Milton Keynes, Gilby came back and was the rhythm guitarist for the rest of the tour. But Izzy did reflect on those 5 dates that he actually played with Guns N' Roses. And he basically said he left without saying goodbye. I didn't actually say see you because they were all effed up. Duff and these guys, they didn't even recognize me. It was really bizarre. It was like playing with zombies. Aw man, it was just horrible. Nobody was laughing anymore. And you could tell that things really ended badly between Izzy and Guns N' Roses when he left in 1993, because pretty much after every date that Gilby came back for, they dedicated Double Talk and Jive to Izzy, and there's plenty of video on YouTube for you guys to find it. And several months after the Use Your Illusion tour ended, Guns N' Roses had the spaghetti incident out, and they actually erased all of Izzy's parts and got Gilby to play on the album. And then Axl and Slash went on Rockline, and the topic of Izzy came up, and here's what they had to say. So a caller into the show said maybe Izzy would be brought back in to help record things. Is there any truth to that? Slash said nothing, no. Axl said none at all. Slash said especially not to help record things, to which Axl said never again, no, not at all. We brought Izzy back in Europe when Gilby had hurt his arm, and then we kind of got blackmailed and we haven't. We really don't want to have anything to do with Izzy ever since then. And Slash said in all honesty, it was cool to get him back when the idea came, and Axl said, and it was cool when he went away as well. So following the Milton Keynes shows, Gilby's first show back was the June 2nd, 1993 show in Vienna, Austria. In fact, during that show, Gilby actually had to pack his arm with ice to reduce the swelling from his broken wrist. And the band was also presented with a Golden Giraffe trophy from the Hungarian record licensee. The cast of the Three Musketeers movie, which was new at the time, also arrived backstage, including Chris O'Donnell. So around this time, too, Matt Sorum actually got married to his first wife, Kai Sorum. So shortly after that, Guns N' Roses play a couple shows in the Netherlands, and the first show, there's actually some pro shop footage of on YouTube where you can see the band playing Knocking on Heaven's Door. This show is also notable because the actual second concert in the Netherlands, Matt Sorum arrived a bit early, and he actually joined the Cult, who were opening for Guns N' Roses for their last number on stage. And following those shows, Guns N' Roses would actually go to Oslo, Norway. And this show was important because Matt Sorum had a lot of ancestral heritage roots in the actual country. So in honor of the nation's heritage, all of the crew actually donned plastic Viking helmets for the show, much to the amusement of the band and the crowd. And before the show, the band is actually presented with platinum discs. So far at that point in time, they'd sold 300,000 records in Norway, which was a pretty impressive feat considering Norway's population was around 3 million people. And following that actual concert the next day, the local mayor called Matt Sorum to invite him and his wife to visit Sorum's ancestral hometown. So on arrival, the party are greeted by a mass of photographers and TV film crews, and the band's own documentary film crew records the drive around the town with the mayor and a visit to the town hall where Matt is presented with a map of the area, the town's coat of arms, and a commemorative scroll. And this concert was important for Matt Sorum because Guns were supposed to play Norway back in 1991, but they had to cancel the show because, according to Slash, Axl got held up in Paris. Now, a couple concerts later, Guns N' Roses play Switzerland, and Blind Melon and the Choir Boys opened that concert. And GNR actually arrived early, apparently, to rehearse a new song, which they don't play. Midway through the set, which includes Dead Flowers, a naked Shannon who and Blind Melon actually walked on stage during the acoustic set to deliver a pizza and then sit down beside Matt Sorum to play the congas. There used to be video footage of this, but I guess it got taken off of YouTube. And then towards the end of June, Guns N' Roses play a concert in Munich, Germany, and this concert's notable because some of the live footage you see in the Estranged video was actually shot from this concert. Now, for a lot of the Europe dates that Guns N' Roses did as part of the Skin and Bones tour, Brian May opened some of those dates. Suicidal Tendencies was one of the openers, and even Blind Melon would open some gigs as well. And there was also the odd gig where the Cult would open. Now, let's fast forward to July 5th, 1993. This is a really important day for Guns N' Roses fans, at least when you look at the history of the band. So according to Duff McKagan's book, his first book, on July 5th, 1993, we all rendezvoused in Barcelona for a huge outdoor show at the Olympic Stadium. Axl came in from Venice, I returned from a visit with Linda to the Spanish island of Ibiza, and Slash was already in Barcelona. After Suicidal Tendencies and Brian May had played their opening sets, our manager Doug Goldstein sent an oddly formal request to see me and Slash before the show. This was unusual. When Slash and I arrived in the Vibe Room, one of our tour managers was sitting there waiting for us. The guy was clutching some papers. He put a slim stack of pages down in front of each of us. I leafed through it, and it was a legal document giving Axl the right to continue to play as Guns N' Roses, even if either Slash or I or both of us were not part of it. Though it didn't affect our status as shareholders in the operation, Axl and Axl alone would control the name if we signed the agreement. What the F, I said. Look, man, the tour manager said, the truth is you guys are not in good shape. You know that yourselves. If one of you dies, nobody wants to have to spend years in court battling your families or whatever. That was not what it said, however. There was nothing about death in these documents. With the crowd outside already getting rowdy, the guy then implied Axl wouldn't go on stage that night unless we signed the documents. I pictured people getting hurt if a riot started, and at least that was my fear. And I was so effing exhausted, it felt like I'd been dragging a house around behind me for the last 2 years. Besides that, at the time, I never thought Guns N' Roses could possibly exist without us. The idea seemed ridiculous, and in that case, maybe the documents didn't need to be fixed. F it, I signed it, so did Slash. Now, fast forward to the last show that Guns N' Roses play in Europe as part of this tour. They play a show in Paris, France, a place they'd played the year before. Granted, they played to about half the audience that played in 1992. They played to an audience of about 15,000 people. And this was a really notable gig because there was a special guest performance by Brian May. So during Knocking on Heaven's Door, they bring Brian May out, and they actually do the old school version of Knocking on Heaven's Door that they had actually done earlier part of the Use Your Illusion tour. So if you guys have seen the shows from 91 and 92, you'll know that they do like a more like bombastic, a harder rockin' version of Knocking on Heaven's Door. Whereas, in the Skin and Bones tour, they did more of an acoustic version. And to me, it's one of my favorite versions of Knocking on Heaven's Door. And also during the actual set, they actually brought their friend Blake Stanton on stage. So Blake Stanton used to be Axl Rose's personal assistant before Craig Duswalt actually became his main-time personal assistant. There's many references in Craig Duswalt's book to Blake, and there's even some photos of him as well. You actually saw him in the background in the first photo from the France show here. And Guns N' Roses were about to leave Europe to go to Argentina to play 2 shows. And you can see this poster here. Guns N' Roses played to over 450,000 fans just in that Europe tour alone, which is really crazy when you think about it. I mean, some of these shows had 50,000 people in attendance just for one show. So Guns N' Roses head to South America and they play Argentina. And this was the second time they actually played Argentina during the Use Your Illusion tour. They played a show back in the late part of 1992. So the first night in Argentina, just before the show, around 5 p.m., as Guns N' Roses gets ready to play to about 70,000 people at River Plate Stadium, a group of 50 police officers from the city's narcotics division descend on the hotel room looking for a large amount of cocaine, which has allegedly been stashed in one of the band members' rooms. They force their way into Axl's top floor suite where he's eating dinner. And the cops show up to his room and they allegedly find nothing. So after the 2-hour search, they drop their allegations, and just as the band's hotel is being invaded, drug squad officers arrive at the stadium and search through the band's equipment and instruments, and they find nothing, so they abandon their quest. Immediately afterwards, Axl calls a press conference, and it's only the second one of the whole tour so that the truth can be disseminated. At 8 p.m., an hour and a quarter behind schedule, the band leave for the stadium. And then the following night on July 17th, 1993, Guns N' Roses play their final show of the Use Your Illusion tour, and that basically ends a 2.5-year world tour that Guns N' Roses go on. So this concert was actually broadcast live on Argentinian TV, and the first night in Argentina was actually broadcast on Argentinian radio. So you could find this whole concert on YouTube. So following this concert, Axl, Dizzy, and Slash return to the hotel bar where Axl plays the grand piano, and the festivities end around 5:30 a.m. So there's actually some audio footage you guys can actually listen to on YouTube of this recording, apparently, of Axl playing the grand piano at the Grand Hyatt. So the following day on July 18th, Gilby, Duff, and Matt leave for the airport to head home at 6:30 a.m. Later in that day, Slash, Dizzy, and Del James sneak off to see Jurassic Park again before catching a 7:45 flight home. And by 9:30 a.m., everyone is back in LA, and the longest tour in rock history has ended. So I hope you guys enjoyed that look at the Skin and Bones tour. Did you guys go see Guns N' Roses during the Skin and Bones tour? Let me know what your guys' thoughts were. Comment down below. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, hit the like button if you enjoyed the contents of this video. Also, please go support me on Patreon if you want to see more videos like this. The link to my Patreon account is down below. And you guys can go follow me on Facebook and Twitter. The links to my social media channels are down below as well. Thanks for watching, guys, and have yourself a good one.